Let's now go to Senator Zed Seselja in Canberra. Zed, good morning. Great to see you. How are you?
Good morning, Rowan. Very well. Great to be with you.
Well, Zed, we were briefly showing the climate bunch, Climate 200 at the top of the show. They look like the Brady Bunch. They're Svengali as this Simon Holmes a court character. Trouble is, they're rushing around pretending to be independents and pretending not to be a political party. And here they are spending squillions of dollars to try and get these characters into Parliament, many of whom pretend to be small L liberals. Yeah, right. You caught them out. They were doctoring a headline. Tell us the story, Zed.
Yeah, look, absolutely, and nothing like a grassroots organisation backed by billionaires. But can I, so this week we did have them caught out in a pretty significant way. Climate 200 running some doctored ads about me in the ACT and the Canberra Times, well, running it online and pretending it was a Canberra Times headline. Now, as someone who's been around politics for a long time, I've had a lot of bad headlines from the Canberra Times, so I'm sure they could have chosen some, but they chose to doctor a headline instead in order to make their argument about some advertising spend by the Commonwealth government, and they got caught out. And, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because they preach trust and integrity when we know many of them are really, recently former Labor members. We know that they're only going after Liberals. And what we saw this week was them being caught out. Instead of just making their case and being honest about it, they had to doctor a headline in order to attack me. And look, I'm not surprised. I suspect we'll see these kind of tactics around the country because this is all about a change of government. It's all about delivering a Labor Greens independent alliance into the Commonwealth Parliament, and that's something we need to fight very hard against. But these are some of the tactics we're clearly going to be up against.
Absolutely, James.
Senator, isn't this just a case of Get Up 2.0? I mean, when you look at an awful lot of the people who are involved with this, you see people who are completely linked to Get Up and other radical, hard left Extinction Rebellion type groups, and yet, as much as they preach transparency, the Holmes Court group, they say, it's a David and Goliath fight, and so the rules shouldn't apply to us. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's a David and Goliath fight when you're backed by, I think, one of Australia's richest men and people like Holmes Court and the founder of Atlassian and others. So, yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of money, this group. There's no doubt about that. And the rules absolutely should apply to them. And, the interesting thing is I think the Australian people are starting to see it, and we'll obviously need to continue to make this case around the country. If you are fair income, if you were independent, what would you do? You would go and you would run candidates all over the country. You'd run them in Labor seats, you'd run them in Liberal seats, and you'd see how they went. They're only running them in Liberal seats. They're preaching a certain type of integrity which they don't seem to be matching in their actions, and they need to be called out on that. So, yeah, the rules do apply to them, and it is important that we shine a spotlight on it from time to time because let's be clear about what they're trying to do. They're trying to effectively hoodwink Liberal voters, traditional Liberal voters, into thinking there's an independent who's actually a lot like them and wouldn't actually change that much but might just have a slightly different policy on climate change, when that's clearly not the case. This is all about changing the government. This is all about a Labor Greens independent alliance. And, that would be a disaster for this country. An absolute disaster.
Well, they are having a great impact because we do have a lot of low information voters who look at the advertising and say, well, yeah, these are independents, they're women. Let's have a fresh voice in Parliament. So I think the Liberals need to get a lot tougher on how they go after this mob. But let's talk just briefly about the seats they're targeting, because they're targeting almost exclusively affluent, inner city, waterside seats. They're not interested in the outer suburbs. They're not interested in poorer demographics. It is the elite.
Wealthy woke.
Wealthy woke.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt if you look around the marginal House seats, they are obviously those type of seats that you describe, and certainly they're Liberal seats. They don't tend to be the outer suburban seats. Now, my area in the Senate, race, of course, has the breadth of the ACT, and despite, what maybe even some on the outsiders panel say, the people in the outer burbs of Canberra that I represent, along with the rest of Canberra, are not that different from the rest of the country, and certainly the suburbs where I've grown up in Tuggeranong. The kind of issues that people care about are very similar to the issues they care about in the suburbs of Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane. It is about jobs. It is about national security, is about what kind of future there's going to be for their kids and getting a good education and those kind of local services. So, you're right. And the other point to make is these climate so-called independents, these Climate 200 independents, they've all got the talking points for the sort of 2 or 3 issues that they've all been sort of told to, or they all seem to agree on. But you go beyond that. And, what is their policy on national security? What is their policy on the economy? What is their policy on so many of these important issues?
Yeah,
and I think when they're pushed, they've got absolutely nothing.
Well, their policy is just support the Greens and Adam Bandt and hardcore lefty policies. Zed, just quickly, your family fled Eastern Europe. Your thoughts on what's happening in the Ukraine?
Yeah, unfortunately, echoes of it. I attended an event on Friday night in Sydney, 30 years of diplomatic relations between Croatia and Australia, and the former Croatian president was there. And one of the points I made and the former Croatian president made was, I guess the Croatian Australians have some understanding of what the Ukrainian people are going through right now, where you have this overwhelming force being used against them. And so it's tragic, in fact, that we're seeing this kind of bloodshed in Europe. My family, I certainly lost some relatives in the conflict in the 90s in the former Yugoslavia and Croatia, and I'm going to a Ukrainian event later on this morning with the local Croatian community, and it's absolutely tragic, and our Prime Minister has made very clear in terms of the level of sanctions that will continue to apply. I know he spoke to Ukrainian President just in the last couple of days, but yeah, our thoughts and prayers are very much with the Ukrainian people as they deal with this absolutely unjust invasion.
Zed Seselja, Senator Zed Seselja from Canberra, thank you so much for coming on Outsiders today and for exposing the fraudulent, independent Simon Holmes at Court Climate 200 tactics. We will be keeping a close eye on that, as I'm sure you will be as well, Senator Zed Seselja. Thanks so much.